Welcome to the SBS Digital Learning Hour, brought to you by the Digital Learning and Assessment Department. We're coming to you today from a conference room in Central Office, bringing you the latest news in Springfield Public Schools in regards to technology, along with inspiring interviews from teachers who are using technology in the classroom. Thanks for joining us today. I am your host, Mike Thomas, the Bearded Tech Ed Guy. You can find me out on all the Instagrams, Facebooks, and Twitters at Bearded Tech Ed. You can also find our blog and podcast on the MySPS We Learn page and my website, beardedtechedguy.com. As you can tell, we took a few weeks off for the holidays, and we are now just getting back into the swing of things. We had a bunch of tasks that we had to accomplish for the last month, and now we are all caught up and being able to work together. So in case you missed it, the latest blog post is out, and it's all about project, problem, and challenge-based learning. So if you're not sure what any of those terms mean, I highly encourage you to go out to our blog. It will be in our show notes, where we delve into the differences between each of those three terms and how they can be applied in your classroom, and depending on how you teach, which ones would actually work best for you. So I highly encourage you to check it out. We found videos, we have lots of great information, easy access, and lots of lesson plans and tools that you can use to integrate into your classroom any one of those three things. Again, that's project, problem, and challenge-based learning. Also, just to let you know, this is the middle of the year. If you have not completed your GCN training, which I believe you have to do every year or every 2 years, make sure that you get that done because it is important for your status in the district. If you forgot where that information is, you can always go out to the news on the MySPS page or ask your clerk. That's it for the news and announcements. Coming up next is our interview of the week. For this week's interview of the week, I met with Heather Grimaldi, a teacher over at Freedman Elementary. She teaches 5th grade and they're departmentalized, and you can hear all about her story by listening to this interview coming up now.
My name is Heather Grimaldi. I teach 5th grade math and science at Freedman Elementary School in Springfield, and I've been teaching for 10 years now.
So 10 years. Has all 10 years been departmentalized like you are talking about now, or have you run the gamut?
Unfortunately, no. I have only done departmentalizing for 2 years, and they have not been consecutive. 1 year we tested it out, and then kind of went back to keeping your classroom, and then we are now back at trying departmentalizing this year.
Mm-hmm. So early years of teaching, fresh out of college, fresh into the classroom, what kind of technology did you have access to? Did you use when you were teaching, if anything at all?
So I actually did start my teaching career in Chicopee, and there with technology, the first thing that I had access to was an overhead projector. So we had to use things like transparencies, things like that to teach the students. Later on, a few years later, they actually installed, I guess you could call them smart boards. It was actually like a whiteboard that had the projector to it. Yes, so we had the overhead projector that was actually a whiteboard so that we could build more technology, and they work similar to the whiteboards that we have, or the smart boards that we have now. You plugged in the laptop and it just kind of projected what was on the laptop. They were interactive, it was great because then the kids could play games and things like that to do their learning.
When it came to that kind of stuff, like once you were able to get away from the colored marker all over your wrist at the end of the day, mm-hmm. as we all remember how transparencies work. I don't know how many copiers you've broken with it, but I have definitely melted some in copiers.
Yes.
But once you got to the point where you had an interactive board,
yes.
whether it was a smart board or whatever they had purchased in Chicopee, mm-hmm. how did you create the lessons or the tools that you used, or did you find things that were already created?
Well, definitely, it was something where we were using Smart Notebook, so it had things built into it. There was actually a professional development that I went to, and I actually presented mm-hmm. it to the staff members at my building. And so using some of the already created material within Smart Notebook was something that I utilized, but it was also a matter of just kind of finding different websites that were interactive and worked with smart boards that kind of helped kind of teach the curriculum.
Mm-hmm. And how do you feel? I mean, you were also, sounds like more of a newer teacher at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So like not only are you learning the curriculum and trying to take all of that stuff in,
right,
and the classroom management part and this new technology thing, how do you feel like it affected like students and their growth?
Well, it's definitely something that was a lot more engaging for kids, and it kind of got them a little bit more interested in their learning. And, you know, it was something that it got them up out of their seats. So that was helpful to them. You know, a lot of kids need those stretch breaks and things like that throughout the day because they would come up to the board and maybe answer questions, or it could have been like a game, you know, that they were going up to the board and moving things and dragging things, which also helped teach them those kinds of skills that they use on computers with the drag and drop and things like that in their education nowadays.
So if we jump ahead from moving on from smart boards, it sounds like students didn't necessarily have a lot of creative power with technology. Are there things in the past few years that you've done that now students can take more ownership over?
Oh, definitely. I mean, especially now here in Springfield with the students having access to a computer every single day, it's something where, you know, they can create their own PowerPoints. They can create, you know, different things that they can show to their classmates or present and use, you know, in different ways. You know, there's even things where it might not even necessarily be a presentation that they do in front of the entire class. It could just be an assignment that they complete, whether it's, you know, just typing a paper. And now they know through obviously practice how to just send it right to the teacher instead of us having to print things out and all that other kind of stuff and having that paper trail. It's kind of a little bit more just, you know, through the interweb.
Through the interweb.
Yeah.
I love it. So with the way that you're teaching now, knowing that you're teaching math and science, what are some ways that you're really utilizing the technology that you have access to?
So definitely when it comes to math, our new curriculum is focusing with the iReady program. So it's the Ready Classroom. And there's a lot of technology components because it's things where the kids can go online and you can assign them, you know, standards mastery things to make sure that they're understanding or possibly just rechecking that they remember something from the beginning of the school year up until now. They can go online and you can assign them certain skills that you're learning in the classroom. For example, maybe they're struggling on multiplication. I can find something specific to that and assign it to them and then kind of see where their progress is at. It'll show me, you know, the kind of work that they're doing and how they're answering the questions and what their responses are. When it comes to science, we're using the Inspire Science program, which pretty much is completely online. Their textbooks are online. They do have workbooks that they use in class, but a lot of it will ask them to, you know, read from the textbook on their computer or find a file on the computer and read that. So it's kind of, again, just eliminating that paper component and getting them a little bit more used to reading things on the computer like they have to do on MCAS. So that's helpful for them to get that practice in during the school year.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things that I've read multiple times over the course of the last few years in regards to students reading on the computer is that depending on which study you look at, depends on how well students are comprehending or not comprehending. How do you balance that reading online and reading in the book and how getting students to really see that it's the same thing?
Well, I think definitely one of the things is obviously understanding that some kids are at all different points, you know, in their learning. They might be at a different reading level. So one of the things that I kind of target with that, especially with the science, because there's a little bit more of the reading component in that than in math. The nice thing with Inspire Science is they actually have leveled readers, so it can kind of be assigned to students based on their reading level. So I do, you know, obviously collaborate with the reading and writing teacher to see where their, you know, F&P scores are at. So then I can kind of gauge what leveled reader to give them. So that kind of assists in that. When it comes to the textbook, however, that's just kind of straightforward, you know, all the same. There's nothing you can really differentiate there other than, you know, I might pull a group to the back. We might read it together. stop at different points, making sure that they're understanding it, but still, using the computer to do so, just kind of making it more of like a group discussion to make sure everyone's kind of on the same page, because it's something where they definitely need to read from the computer. It's something where, we do teach them, obviously, since they're reading from the computer and they don't have the paper in front of them, they can write notes as they're kind of going along. Where typically, before when we had the paper-based tests, they would write right on the page or underline things. So they used, the components of highlighting things and that kind of thing when they're looking at the text online.
Since math is probably your major focus, math more than science a lot of times, or at least that's what it probably feels like.
Except in 5th grade, because they do take a science MCAS.
That's true. I do remember having to do the science MCAS. When it comes to the open response type questions where students have to explain their thinking, what kind of strategies have you used to help them, knowing that MCAS is on the computer and sometimes it's a lot easier to write out an equation and say that's how, and like just get them beyond you just need the answer, but you need to explain why. Right. Which is a big part of the test.
So definitely with this new math curriculum that we have, the Ready Classroom, it's doing a lot of that already for the kids, where it's asking them to, explain their answer. So I tell them, okay, showing your work is acceptable, but think about the steps that we used in order to solve the problem. How could you put that into words? If you were to explain to a 3rd grader how to round this number, what would you tell them? So I have them kind of think about it as like a dialogue kind of conversation that they would be having with somebody else. How could you teach someone how to do that? Put it into words that way. And it's one of those things where a lot of times the questions will ask them those kinds of prompting things, but it'll even ask them to think about, okay, if someone answered the question this way, what did they do wrong? So it's just really inputting a lot more writing into all of the subjects to really build that. We see it across math, we see it across science, so they're really starting to see that writing doesn't happen just in the writing block. It happens in math, it happens in science, so it's something they have to get used to doing.
And again, I just have another MCAS question because it came to me since I haven't been teaching 5th grade for a few years now. When it comes to math, there's a lot of times you have to do the work. On the computer, you have to use the equation editor.
Yes.
How do you prepare students for that, knowing that every equation editor is like very slightly different to the point where some of them it's just a different font?
Right. So definitely even just looking at a keyboard and showing kids, there's a plus sign on all of them. There's a subtraction sign. There's an equal sign. You can use the X for multiplication. And for division, kind of using that backslash. That's something that, especially that division one, it's a little bit more, of a dialogue that you have to have with the kids so that they understand why. Because they want to write the typical division sign. And that's not something that's on a keyboard. So if they can't find those kinds of things on an equation editor, even through practice, knowing that they have most of it, at the tip of their fingertips, right on the keyboard, helps them.
Yeah. I always remember when I was teaching 5th grade, trying to differentiate the difference between fractions and division. Because when it came to one of the last years that I taught was the first year we did Park. And so like having to do all that math in like 60 minutes was insane. Right. I'm glad that MCAS is much more spread out, as in as much time as you need.
Absolutely.
But getting them to realize that a fraction is really a division problem.
Absolutely.
So what are some of the strategies you've used to really help with that?
Well, there's definitely, especially in 5th grade, specific lessons that go over that. So they understand, 1/4 is 1 divided by 4. You can use that using models, things like that, fraction tiles, all that kind of stuff. But also just, reiterating with them improper fractions. That's a division problem. If you have 12/4, you're going to do 12 divided by 4, which is going to give you 3. So just thinking of that fraction bar as a division sign and really teaching that to them is something that we spend a good amount of time going over so that they don't forget it.
Yeah, I definitely agree that I spent much more time than I thought I had to.
Oh, absolutely.
But that's how long it took the students to understand it. When it comes to math, because we do have that in common. I remember when I first started teaching, we had investigations, and investigations was very heavily manipulative based.
Right.
With Envisions, it was a mixture.
Right.
And having not been in the classroom with the common math, like where on that spectrum, is it a lot of manipulatives? Is it very few manipulatives? Are there digital manipulatives that you use? So
it's a little bit of everything. So it's definitely things where, you can just do it, paper pencil, because they do have their workbooks to work in. But, you are going to have those kids that just need a little bit more assistance. They might not get it yet, so that you can pull out, the different manipulatives. So we do have, the hands-on ones that the kids can use. But the nice thing with the Ready Classroom is there are digital manipulatives on there. There's fraction tiles, there's number lines, there's all different kinds of things on there that they can use. And those seem to help the kids a lot.
That's great.
Yeah.
I don't know how much of a Microsoft school you guys are and how much of the tools that you use. OneNote is got a lot of great tools in it. I don't know if you've used it at all or if your students have kind of figured it out. But there is a math helper built right into OneNote.
Oh, okay.
Which explains how to do the math problems. You're looking at me like, I have no idea what you're talking about. This is great. So in the OneNote notebook, it actually can walk them, not just tell them the answer to a problem like a calculator, but it can walk them through step by step. Like, this is how you solve the problem. So since you're now learning about this, be prepared because your students might actually already know.
Good to know. They can teach me then.
They can teach you. So with math and science, you're using technology. How have you found that, integrating it between, the stand and deliver part of your lessons versus the group work part versus the rotations that you do? How do you find that technology has assisted in the way that you teach?
Well, it's definitely something where I use it pretty much in every component of whether it's the math block or the science block. So the nice thing with the Ready Classroom is they provide you with, it's almost like a PowerPoint. You have the slides that you can show right on the smartboard and kind of go through the workbook pages with the kids because it pretty much resembles those there. And then, obviously the kids will have some time to work in their workbook if they need to. And we have the group time. Obviously, they can use those digital manipulatives. We're obviously going to use our computers to do iReady. So there's a lot of different of those kinds of components that are nice. The Ready Classroom also has enrichment activities. Those aren't necessarily technology-based, nor are the centers, but it's still something that we utilize. So you
are able to bounce around between all the tools that you have available to you.
Absolutely.
That's great. Thinking about where you've come from in your teaching, how has technology kind of helped you become the teacher you are now?
It's definitely, I feel release a little bit more from the teacher and put more towards the students, which is kind of what we want. We want it student driven more than teacher led. And what's nice about that is, the students have, each have a laptop that they can use. Most of them even have the take home laptops, so they can utilize different resources that we use at school also at home and do a little bit of extra, research and projects and things like that with those. But what's really nice about it is it gives kids, that independence and that confidence to kind of do the work on their own and be able to kind of share it with the teacher and then bounce it back and forth so that we can give feedback and then they can correct things without so much of the other kids kind of knowing what's going on. Because a lot of kids like that privacy.
Oh, absolutely.
They want to ask questions, but they don't want the other students to know that they might not be getting something or that they need help with something. So it kind of, helps their confidence in that kind of a sense.
Not every student is the Sheldon student if you're a big band fan. So as we begin to wrap up, because I don't want to take too much more of your time away from whatever you need to do to prepare for the end of the day. If you had the opportunity to stand in front of new teachers, new to Springfield, new fresh out of college, what advice would you offer them? It doesn't have to be anything related to technology. Just what would, if you were that person, what would you have loved to hear now that you've been teaching?
I mean, definitely just, being of the age where technology was kind of something new as I was growing up, know that you can utilize, those tools within your classroom. Find a different way to kind of put your spin on it to figure out how to use it in an educational purpose. And not only that, but also just be open to like new ideas as well. And definitely seek out your technology coordinator because they have a lot of useful information.
Awesome. Well, thank you for this time. I know our listeners are going to be really excited to hear about this. And I want to let you get back to the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Heather, again for allowing me to come in and to talk to you during the day. And I hope that our listeners got a lot out of what you shared and the things that are going on in your classroom and how you are applying technology in the classroom and even adapting to the curriculum as it is brand new this year. So thank you guys, listeners, for spending some time with me. If you like this podcast, like this episode, go out to your favorite podcast tool listener, wherever you're listening to podcasts, whether that's iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, on the MySPS site, on the Spreaker sites, wherever you listen to us. Give us a thumbs up, leave us a review, rating, subscribe. If you are subscribed, you should share that link with other people so that they can also find out more about what's happening here at the SBS Digital Learning Hour and in Springfield in particular. We very much appreciate all that information that you share and that you give us. That feedback helps us in giving you the best podcast possible. If you know of someone who'd be great to interview, just send us a note. You can do it through our help desk. You can do it through the Yammer app that we have in the district. We'd love to hear from you about who you think would be great to talk to. If you are doing something pretty awesome in the classroom, we'd also love to hear from you. I'd love to come out to schools and get to know what's going on in the schools, because for a lot of us, there's 62 schools and we're stuck in our own buildings and we don't get a chance to share all that much. So this is an excellent opportunity for us to do that. Please let us know. You can always reach out to us in the many ways throughout the district. Once again, I am your host, Mike Thomas, and this was the SBS Digital Learning Hour.